The 1990s unleashed a dark vision of tomorrow that terrified censors worldwide. While mainstream audiences devoured Star Wars prequels, underground sci-fi creators crafted nightmares so disturbing that governments locked them away. But decades later, these forbidden visions have finally escaped their vaults. Ready to see what they didn't want you to watch? Number 1. Event Horizon, 1997. A spaceship returns from hell itself, bringing cosmic terror and imagery so brutal that studio executives nearly had heart attacks. Paul Anderson's Event Horizon wasn't just another space thriller. It was a vision so depraved that Paramount demanded nearly 30 minutes of footage be destroyed after test audiences literally fled theaters vomiting. The story follows a rescue crew investigating a missing spaceship that suddenly appears near Neptune. What they find isn't just a ship. It's a vessel transformed into a living nightmare after traveling through a dimensional gateway. The original cut featured extended scenes of the crew's hallucinations, including graphic self-mutilation, crew members engaging in acts so disturbing test audiences couldn't sit through them, and visions from hell itself. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. Anderson shot on a punishing schedule, with studio executives growing increasingly horrified by the dailies. The MPAA slapped the submitted cut with an NC-17 rating, forcing frantic edits. Paramount ultimately butchered the film down to a confusing R-rated version. Then, in a move that still infuriates film preservationists, they literally destroyed the excised footage rather than simply locking it away. Critics savaged the theatrical release as incoherent, never knowing they were watching a gutted version of Anderson's vision. Yet, over time, fans recognized something genuinely nightmarish lurking in the fragmented remains. Today, while the complete uncut version remains lost, partial restorations have emerged on streaming platforms, finally giving glimpses of Anderson's hellish voyage that studios desperately tried to erase from existence. Number 2. Starship Troopers, 1997. A military recruitment film that was actually savage anti-fascist satire, and American audiences completely missed the joke. Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers looked like mindless action, but beneath its surface lurked one of the most subversive mainstream films ever released. Censors worldwide didn't miss the message, and their scissors came out fast. Following Johnny Rico's journey from high school student to frontline soldier in humanity's war against alien bugs, the film deliberately mimics Nazi propaganda aesthetics. The brilliant twist? The humans are the real monsters. German censors immediately flagged the Nazi parallels, demanding cuts to scenes showing military ceremonies and propaganda films that too closely resembled their own dark history. Meanwhile, Asian markets balked at the explicit violence, with Malaysia and Thailand banning it completely. Verhoeven, still stinging from the backlash to Showgirls, deliberately stacked his cast with models and soap stars, creating a world of beautiful fascists to maximize audience discomfort. Studio executives expecting a straightforward action film were horrified by Verhoeven's satirical approach, but couldn't stop its release. Critics initially dismissed it as brainless action, completely missing Verhoeven's scathing commentary on American militarism and media manipulation. Roger Ebert famously called it propaganda for an ideology I hate, never realizing that was exactly Verhoeven's point. Only years later did audiences finally recognize its genius. A Trojan horse critique of fascism disguised as a mainstream blockbuster. Today, streaming platforms offer the complete uncut version, revealing just how brilliantly Verhoeven weaponized Hollywood against itself. Number 3. Strange Days, 1995. A brutal vision of societal collapse set in the futuristic year of 1999. Catherine Bigelow's Strange Days didn't just disturb censors with its violence, it terrified them with its prophetic vision of police brutality and societal collapse. Released just 3 years after the Los Angeles riots, the film hit nerves too raw for comfort. The movie follows an ex-cop who deals in squid recordings, illegal technology that allows users to experience others' memories, including their deaths. When he receives a recording of a brutal assault, he's pulled into a conspiracy involving corrupt cops and racial violence. The film's unflinching depiction of police murdering an unarmed black man proved too real for comfort, with several countries demanding cuts or outright refusing distribution. Behind the scenes, production was chaotic. James Cameron's screenplay went through multiple rewrites as studio executives panicked over its portrayal of law enforcement. The MPAA initially gave it an NC-17 rating, citing the film's opening sequence where viewers experience a robbery and death from first-person perspective. Even after cuts, several theater chains refused to show the film, fearing it would incite violence. Critics were divided, some praising its fearless social commentary, while others condemned its unflinching brutality. The film flopped commercially, partially because distributors buried it, fearing its depiction of Los Angeles in flames might trigger real-world violence. Today, Strange Days is finally available uncut, and viewers are stunned by how accurately it predicted everything from police body cameras to the public's insatiable appetite for experiencing violence as entertainment. What was once considered too extreme now feels uncomfortably prophetic. Number 4. Crash, 1996. People having intimate encounters with car wrecks. David Cronenberg's adaptation of J.G. Ballard's novel didn't just push boundaries, it obliterated them. Crash became the first major film to be banned in the UK, despite receiving awards at Cannes, with censors claiming it would deprave and corrupt audiences with its portrayal of mechanized desire. The film follows a film producer who, after surviving a car crash, discovers an underground subculture of crash survivors who become aroused by car accidents and their resulting injuries. Westminster City Council banned the film from every cinema in central London, while critics like Alexander Walker called it beyond the bounds of depravity. Even Ted Turner tried to prevent its release in the United States, despite his own company owning distribution rights. Cronenberg refused to make a single cut, creating a standoff with censors worldwide. The MPAA gave it an NC-17 rating, effectively limiting its distribution, while countries like Norway and Australia heavily censored scenes involving crash fetishism and disability. Behind the scenes, the cast suffered real psychological strain, with James Spader later revealing he couldn't drive normally for months after filming. Critics were viciously divided. Martin Scorsese called it a masterpiece, while others labeled it dangerous filth. The controversy made it impossible for audiences to judge for themselves, as many theaters refused to screen it even where legally permitted. Today, streaming platforms finally offer the complete uncut version, revealing a clinical, disturbing meditation on technology's effect on human intimacy that's more relevant than ever in our screen-obsessed world. Number 5. eXistenZ, 1999. Video games that plug directly into your spine, blurring reality with fantasy until you can't tell which is which. Cronenberg's eXistenZ was the Y2K panic manifested as body horror, and censors worldwide panicked. Countries like China and Malaysia banned it outright, while others demanded extensive cuts to its organ-like game controllers and bioport scenes. The story follows game designer Allegra Geller, creator of a revolutionary virtual reality game, accessed through bioports installed at the base of players' spines. When anti-game extremists attempt to assassinate her, she goes on the run with a marketing trainee, diving deeper into layers of game reality until neither they nor the audience can distinguish what's real. The film's fusion of technology with flesh proved too disturbing for many censorship boards. Behind the scenes, Cronenberg designed the organic game controllers to resemble human organs, deliberately invoking uncomfortable connections between technology and biology. The film's violence, particularly a scene involving a gun made of bone and cartilage that fires human teeth, triggered immediate censorship flags. Japanese censors demanded cuts to scenes showing the bioports, which resembled body orifices, while German authorities required edits to the more violent game sequences. Critics struggled with its deliberately disorienting narrative, many missing its prescient warnings about virtual reality addiction. Audiences, expecting a conventional sci-fi thriller, instead received a base philosophical nightmare about the nature of reality itself. Today, as VR technology rapidly advances, eXistenZ is available uncut on multiple platforms, revealing itself as disturbingly prophetic rather than merely shocking. Watching it now feels less like entertainment and more like a warning we should have heeded. Number 6. Total Recall, 1990. Memory implants, triple-breasted aliens, and violence so extreme that Paul Verhoeven had to submit the film to the MPAA a staggering 12 times before securing an R rating. Total Recall wasn't just science fiction. It was an assault on censor sensibilities wrapped in an Arnold Schwarzenegger blockbuster. The story follows Douglas Quaid, a construction worker who discovers his entire identity might be implanted memories, sending him on a mission to Mars that blurs the line between reality and illusion. The original cut featured extreme violence that horrified censors. An extended elevator, shooting with bullets ripping through bodies, limbs being severed by subway barriers, and eyeballs bulging during decompression on Mars's surface. Verhoeven battled relentlessly with the MPAA, grudgingly trimming frames of blood spray and gore with each submission. International censors were even harsher. The UK's BBFC demanded 16 cuts, Germany required extensive edits to the violence, and several Asian countries banned it outright. Behind the scenes, Schwarzenegger lobbied studio executives to preserve Verhoeven's vision, arguing that the extreme violence was necessary for the film's impact. Despite the cuts, the film became a massive hit, grossing over $261 million worldwide. Critics praised its mind-bending narrative but were divided on its violence, with some calling it gratuitous, while others saw it as essential to the film's themes of reality versus illusion. Today, streaming platforms offer the uncut version that restores Verhoeven's original vision, revealing just how much was sacrificed to appease censors. The irony? A film about memory manipulation was itself manipulated, with audiences' memories of what they actually saw becoming as unreliable as Quaid's. Number 7. Johnny Mnemonic, 1995. A pre-Matrix Keanu Reeves carrying corporate data in his brain while fighting pharmaceutical giants and militant preachers. Johnny Mnemonic wasn't just cyberpunk spectacle. It was William Gibson's warning about corporate control packaged as a sci-fi thriller, and several countries immediately recognized the threat to their power structures. Based on Gibson's short story, the film follows a mnemonic courier who carries sensitive data in a brain implant, only to discover he's transporting the cure for a global disease that corporations are suppressing for profit. China banned it outright for its depiction of corporate corruption and technological rebellion, while Singapore demanded cuts to scenes showing anti-corporate resistance. In Malaysia, the film was heavily censored for its portrayal of an underground resistance, movement, and religious criticism. Behind the scenes, the production was chaotic. Gibson's screenplay was brutally cut by studio executives who wanted more action and less philosophy. Director Robert Longo, making his feature debut after a career in visual arts, clashed constantly with producers over the film's vision. The Japanese cut of the film actually contained more of Gibson's original screenplay and ran 10 minutes longer than the American version. Critics savaged the American cut as incoherent, not realizing they were watching a gutted version of Gibson's vision. Audiences, expecting simple action, instead got fragmented cyberpunk philosophy. The film flopped commercially, but developed a cult following as bootleg copies of the Japanese extended cut circulated among Gibson fans. Today, streaming platforms offer the complete Japanese version, finally revealing the deeper critique of corporate control and technological addiction that censors and studios tried to suppress. Number 8. The Lawnmower Man, 1992. Virtual reality transforms a simple gardener into a vengeful digital god, and censors worldwide thought the film's hallucinatory imagery might transform audiences' minds just as dramatically. The Lawnmower Man faced censorship not for its violence, but for its psychedelic virtual reality sequences that authorities feared might mimic drug experiences. The film follows Dr. Lawrence Angelo, who uses experimental virtual reality therapy to dramatically increase the intelligence of Job Smith, a developmentally disabled gardener. As Job's mind evolves, he gains telekinetic powers and ultimately plans to distribute his consciousness through the world's computer networks. Several countries, including South Korea and Malaysia, heavily censored the virtual reality sequences, fearing they might trigger seizures or mimic hallucinogenic experiences. Behind the scenes, the film had nothing to do with Stephen King's original short story. Despite using his name in marketing, King successfully sued to have his name removed from the title. The groundbreaking CGI effects, revolutionary at the time, consumed nearly half the film's budget, causing constant tension between director Brett Leonard and studio executives who wanted more conventional sci-fi action. The MPAA initially gave it an R rating, forcing cuts to both the virtual reality sequences and scenes involving Pierce Brosnan's character taking drugs to enhance his VR experience. Critics were divided, some praising its visual innovation, while others dismissed its pseudoscientific premise. Today, the director's cut is available uncut on streaming platforms, restoring 38 minutes of footage including extended VR sequences that studio executives feared would be too intense for theatrical audiences. Viewed now, it's less shocking than prophetic, a warning about technology's potential to transform human consciousness that arrived decades before the current VR revolution. Number 9. Naked Lunch, 1991. Typewriters transforming into giant insects, talking rectums, and hallucinations so bizarre that several countries banned it outright. David Cronenberg's adaptation of William S. Burroughs' unfilmable novel wasn't just strange, it was a deliberate assault on conventional narrative and censorship itself. The film follows exterminator Bill Lee, who accidentally kills his wife and escapes into a hallucinatory realm called Interzone, where he encounters bizarre creatures and receives writing assignments from mysterious entities. South Korea banned it completely, while Australia and Singapore demanded extensive cuts to its surreal creature effects and drug-taking sequences. The UK's BBFC required multiple edits before granting it an 18 certificate. Cronenberg, knowing a direct adaptation of Burroughs' non-linear novel was impossible, instead created a meta-narrative that merged Burroughs' life with his fiction. The film deliberately blurs reality and hallucination, making censors' job of identifying objectionable content nearly impossible. How do you censor a talking insect typewriter's demands? The production team used practical effects rather than CGI, creating genuinely disturbing creature designs that triggered censors' concerns about harmful creatures that might disturb audiences. Critics were deeply divided, some hailing it as brilliant, while others condemned it as incomprehensible. Gene Siskel famously walked out of a screening. Audiences were equally baffled, and the film bombed commercially. But over time, it developed a cult following, particularly among writers and artists who appreciated its exploration of the creative process. Today, streaming platforms offer the uncut version, revealing Cronenberg's full vision of addiction, creativity, and the thin line between reality and hallucination, a line that censors themselves couldn't clearly identify. Number 10. Dark City, 1998. Memory manipulation, reality reshaped nightly, and human bodies modified by pale aliens. Alex Proyas's Dark City wasn't just a mind-bending noir thriller, it was a philosophical nightmare that censors feared might destabilize viewers' grasp on reality itself. The film faced cuts worldwide not for explicit content, but for its disturbing implications about human identity. The story follows John Murdoch, who awakens with amnesia to discover he's wanted for murder in a city where it's perpetually night. As he investigates, he uncovers a truth more disturbing than any crime. Pale aliens called strangers freeze time at midnight to physically reshape the city and implant new memories in its inhabitants. Several Southeast Asian countries heavily censored the film, particularly scenes showing the strangers' ability to alter physical reality and human memory, which conflicted with religious beliefs. Behind the scenes, New Line Cinema panicked after early test screenings confused audiences. They forced Proyas to add an opening narration that explained the premise, spoiling the film's central mystery before it even began. European censors required cuts to scenes showing the strangers injecting memories and modifying human bodies, while religious groups in America protested its supposed anti-religious themes and demanded boycotts. Roger Ebert called it one of the best films ever made, while many mainstream critics dismissed it as confusing and derivative. Released just a year before The Matrix, the film's commercial failure was partly due to studio mishandling and censorship that rendered its narrative incoherent in many markets. Today, the director's cut is available uncut on streaming platforms, removing the spoiler narration and restoring Proyas' complete vision. A philosophical nightmare about identity that was too intellectually challenging for censors to comprehend, let alone regulate. Number 11. Hardware, 1990. a self-repairing military robot, slaughters apartment dwellers in a radiation-blasted future. Richard Stanley's Hardware didn't just push boundaries, it jackhammered through them with industrial music blasting. The film was initially denied classification in Australia and slapped with an X rating in America before cuts made it marginally more acceptable to censors. Set in a post-apocalyptic future, the film follows Moses, a scavenger who brings home robot parts that reassemble into the MARC-13, a military prototype programmed to eliminate human life. The original cut featured extended death scenes that horrified censors, including a neighbor being impaled through the mouth and a shower murder with explicit nudity and violence combined. The MPAA demanded multiple cuts before granting an R rating, while British censors required nearly 2 minutes of edits. Stanley, directing his first feature, battled constantly with distributors and censors. The production itself was chaotic, with limited budget forcing creative solutions for the robot effects. Adding to the controversy, the filmmakers were sued by 2000 AD Comics for plagiarizing a short story called Shock, a case they eventually settled out of court. Critics were divided, some praising its visual style, while others dismissed it as exploitative. The film developed a cult following partly because censorship made the uncut version a sought-after rarity. Today, the complete version is available on specialty streaming platforms, revealing Stanley's full vision of technological horror. The irony? A film about military technology running amok was itself a victim of systems designed to control what audiences could see. A meta-commentary on control that Stanley likely appreciated even as he fought against it. Number 12. Tetsuo 2. Body Hammer, 1992. A businessman's body transforms into a grotesque metal-human hybrid with guns erupting from his limbs. Shinya Tsukamoto's Tetsuo 2. Body Hammer didn't just disturb censors, it fundamentally challenged their understanding of what constituted a film. The movie was initially banned in Malaysia, Singapore, and heavily censored across Europe for its merging of flesh with metal. Following a salaryman whose rage triggers a terrifying metamorphosis into a weapon-sprouting metal creature, the film abandons conventional narrative for a surreal, pounding assault of images and industrial sound. German censors demanded extensive cuts to scenes showing metal penetrating human flesh, while British authorities required edits to sequences where characters' bodies violently transform. Australia initially refused classification entirely, effectively banning it. Tsukamoto, working with minimal budget, shot in high-contrast black and white with jerky stop-motion effects that made the transformations more disturbing than big-budget gore. The film's unrelenting industrial soundtrack and strobe-like editing triggered epilepsy warnings and further complicated censors' assessments. Behind the scenes, actors endured grueling physical transformations, with metal prosthetics attached directly to their skin during marathon shooting sessions. Critics were polarized. Some hailed it as visionary cyberpunk, while others dismissed it as incoherent body horror. Western audiences, unfamiliar with Japanese cyberpunk traditions, often missed its themes of industrialization's effect on humanity. For years, only heavily edited versions were available outside Japan. Today, specialty streaming services offer the complete, uncut version, revealing Tsukamoto's full vision of humanity's merging with technology, a transformation that censors themselves couldn't properly categorize or control. Number 13. Demolition Man, 1993. A dystopian future where all violence, swearing, and bad behavior is illegal. Sylvester Stallone's sci-fi action film wasn't just entertainment, it was a direct attack on censorship itself, and ironically became a victim of the very censorship it mocked. Several countries heavily edited the film, missing that their actions proved its entire point. Set in 2032, the film follows a police officer and criminal from 1996 who are thawed from cryogenic prison to find a supposedly utopian society where everything potentially harmful is illegal, from salt to bad language. China banned it outright for its portrayal of authoritarian control disguised as utopia, while Singapore heavily censored its action sequences and satirical dialogue. Even in the US, television broadcasts removed not just violence, but also political commentary. Behind the scenes, the script underwent numerous rewrites as studio executives worried about its political messaging. The original screenplay featured a much darker vision of the future, with the pacified citizens being secretly harvested for organs. Director Marco Brambilla fought to maintain the satire beneath the action, while Stallone pushed for more conventional heroics. The resulting tension created a film that worked on multiple levels. Critics mostly saw it as a standard Stallone vehicle, missing its pointed criticism of sanitized culture and censorship. Audiences embraced the action, but often overlooked the satire. The film performed well commercially despite the cuts, grossing over $159 million worldwide. Today, streaming platforms offer the uncut version that restores both the action and the satirical dialogue that many censors removed. The ultimate irony? A film warning about sanitized culture was itself sanitized by authorities worldwide, validating its central premise in real time. Number 14. Species, 1995. Alien DNA creates a beautiful woman who seduces and slaughters men while searching for a mate. Roger Donaldson's Species wasn't just sci-fi horror, it was a gender-flipped predator story that censors worldwide found too sexually charged and violent for comfort. The film was heavily cut in dozens of countries and banned outright in several others. The plot follows scientists who receive an alien transmission containing DNA instructions, which they combine with human DNA to create Syl, a female hybrid who escapes confinement and rapidly matures into a beautiful woman with lethal alien abilities. The original cut featured explicit scenes of transformation, with Natasha Henstridge's character violently shifting between human and alien forms during intimate encounters. Malaysia and Singapore banned it outright, while India demanded extensive cuts to both violent and intimate scenes. H.R. Giger, famous for designing the xenomorph in Alien, created Syl's alien form, giving it distinctly sexual characteristics that immediately triggered censorship concerns. The MPAA initially gave it an NC-17 rating, forcing multiple rounds of edits to secure an R. Behind the scenes, MGM executives constantly pushed for more intimate scenes, while simultaneously demanding cuts to the violence, creating a contradictory production process. Critics dismissed it as exploitation disguised as sci-fi, while audience response was strong enough to spawn 3 sequels. The film grossed over $113 million worldwide, despite the censorship. Today, the director's cut is available on specialty streaming platforms, restoring Giger's complete creature designs and the more explicit transformation sequences. What censors feared most wasn't just the violence or intimate content individually, but their deliberate combination. A female predator who weaponized her sexuality in ways that inverted traditional gender dynamics in horror. Number 15. Cube, 1997. Strangers wake up in a maze of deadly traps with no explanation why they're there or how to escape. Vincenzo Natali's Cube wasn't just low-budget horror. It was a philosophical nightmare that censors feared might inspire real-world violence. Several countries heavily cut its trap sequences, while others banned it outright, missing its deeper critique of bureaucracy and authority. The film follows 6 strangers who awaken in interconnected cubic rooms, some containing lethal traps, with no memory of how they arrived. As they navigate the deadly maze, they discover each possesses skills that might help them escape, even as paranoia tears them apart. Germany and Malaysia heavily censored the death scenes, particularly one involving a character being sliced into cubes by a wire grid, while Singapore initially banned it completely. Shot on a shoestring budget of just $365,000, Natali created only one cube room set that was relit and redressed to represent different chambers. The Canadian Film Development Corporation initially balked at the script's violence, only agreeing to fund it after Natali convinced them of its philosophical underpinnings. Behind the scenes, mathematical consultants were hired to create the navigational number system that drives the film's puzzle. Critics were divided, some praising its inventiveness, while others condemned its nihilism and violence. The film performed modestly in theaters, but became a cult phenomenon on DVD, spawning 2 sequels and a Japanese remake. Today, the uncut version streams on multiple platforms, revealing Natoli's complete vision of humans trapped in systems they neither understand nor control. The censorship itself became meta-commentary on the film's themes. Bureaucrats deciding what people could see in a film about bureaucrats controlling people's lives. The 1990s didn't just give us sleek Hollywood visions of the future. It delivered raw, disturbing prophecies that authorities tried to bury. From flesh merging with technology to virtual reality addiction, these films didn't just push boundaries, they obliterated them. Which of these banned visions disturbs you most? And with today's technology rapidly catching up to these once fictional nightmares, were censors trying to protect us, or just delaying warnings we desperately needed to hear? Let us know in the comments below.